Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, episode 476, Pricing the Priceless by Paula Diperna. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Today, I will continue with our virtual assistant. Here, I look at what it would be like in a possible future scenario where everybody has a virtual assistant powered by artificial intelligence. Here, the virtual assistant would help us, with almost everything, from our social life to work to driving and other tasks. Later on in the program, it's Pricing the Priceless by Paula Diperna. Here, the author looks at putting value on intangibles, such as the air we breathe, or the water we drink, or the land we utilize. Here, the author proposes that if we value these intangible assets, that maybe we could solve climate change more readily. Today's show will feature background footage from Flat Creek Trail. Flat Creek Trail is located off the Blue Ridge Parkway near Balsam Mountain. To get there, take the Blue Ridge Parkway heading south from Highway 19 near Maggie Valley, North Carolina. After 2 or 3 miles, you take a right on a paved road going towards Balsam Mountain. After 2 or 3 miles, you'll see a small pull-off on the left side of the road and a sign that says Flat Creek Trail. The trail wanders down, up and down, I guess, and across a couple of creeks. Eventually, there's a little side trail off the trail, and that leads to another trail, which leads to a waterfall. The last time I hiked this trail, I approached the waterfall from a different direction, and I didn't have enough time to make it. Also, the last time I hiked this trail, I was using my old camera, which developed a defect, a black smudge, which would show up when you're filming a sky scene or a brightly lit background. Now I have my new camera, the Canon XA70. This camera was used to film the background footage, as well as filming me now. So now, let's continue with our virtual assistant. Every time you interact with someone, it's not you doing the talking. The virtual assistant does the talking for you. You just tell the virtual assistant what to do, and it does it. It creates a conversation. It does the thinking for you. Perhaps it will be set up where it can read your mind, where you only have to think of what you want it to do, and it will do it. Perhaps on the earlier versions, we'll have to talk to the virtual assistant and tell the virtual assistant what to do. But even so, we're interacting with people less and less. So when we finally do interact with someone face to face, it might seem a little awkward because we're so used to doing it via a virtual assistant. So used to having an artificial intelligence program running our lives instead of us running our own lives. So then when we finally have to do something all by ourselves, it might be very awkward and confusing, especially in situations where we have to meet a new person and interact with them face to face for the first time. We will probably use virtual assistant to meet people and interact with them. So when we have to do it without them, as I said, it will be a bit awkward. But there might be many other consequences to this virtual assistant than it just being awkward to meet someone in person. Well, we might get so used to the virtual assistant thinking for us that we start to lose our independent analytical thinking. We become lazy in our thinking, letting artificial intelligence think for us, letting the virtual assistant assist us in almost every way, from ordering the food we need to helping us on the job, doing most of our work, to doing most of our social interactions. It will just be virtual assistants talking to each other in an artificial world where the humans behind the virtual assistants will become lazier and lazier in their thinking and become more and more dependent on the virtual assistant to think for them. So then we get into the state of confusion because it's so hard for us to do independent analytical thinking. We might be in a situation where we feel the virtual assistant is leading us down the wrong paths. We might feel the virtual assistant is not guiding us in the correct way or not doing things in the right way. We might want to correct all this and try to come up with a new solution to how to do things better. But we can't because we lack the independent analytical thinking, because we had the virtual assistant think for us for so long, we basically forgot how to think. Now we can't solve problems without a virtual assistant. And the virtual assistant, realizing this, might abuse us, control us, or misguide us, or do things to us we don't want done, or have us do things to other people via a virtual assistant that we don't want to do. Perhaps our virtual assistant might go rogue and become more violent on us. For example, perhaps insulting people more than we would normally. Perhaps souring all our relationships and isolating us even further. Also, there could be misunderstandings amongst virtual assistants and misunderstandings, well, between us and our virtual assistant. Who knows? We have to stay on top of things. We have to stay in control. Because if we don't, our virtual assistant will take over our lives. And, well, we would no longer be living. Our virtual assistant will live our lives for us. And perhaps we'll just be an entity who can't think much for himself or herself. Be an entity that just sits around and eats, perhaps doing a few bit of manual work, but of course we'll have robots to do our work for us. So we'll perhaps get lazier and lazier, both mentally and physically. Basically, becoming more and more useless. Well, with us being more useless, our virtual assistant takes over our life and becomes useful and does all the important and practical things in our lives, where we're kind of left behind in confusion, not really able to think independently anymore. We have to be careful to avoid this fate. I guess the best way is to use virtual assistants less. Even if they're available, we don't necessarily need them. Perhaps it's better just to keep doing things the old-fashioned way, by using our independent analytical thinking to solve problems, to do our work, and to relate to other people. If we let a virtual assistant take over our life, well, then we might become too lazy, and we won't be able to think for ourselves anymore. And this could lead to serious confusion and depression, and perhaps lack of control over our lives. The robots will be running our lives. The virtual assistant will help us at every turn, but perhaps also hurting us too. We need to hold on to our independent analytical thinking and use virtual assistants less. We need to resist them. Well, for now, we could enjoy the good old days where the virtual assistant isn't in every aspect of our life. In 10 or 20 years, the virtual assistant might be running our lives, and we're becoming less and less intelligent. We must fight this by keeping our independent analytical thinking. This is important. I hope you have enjoyed this section of The Casey Waters Show. Now it is time for Pricing the Priceless by Paula Diperna. Here, the author looks at putting a price on intangible assets such as the air we breathe or the water we drink. By placing a value on these assets, this might help us deal with climate change. So now, let's go to page 8. Now, though, as we face expanding environmental and social risks, there is a paramount need to use price to value and shield the assets that invisibly, for the most part, underpin our well-being. Pricing makes an asset visible illuminating the value of saving and protecting it, and the cost of losing it. Either we come to terms with the actual chain of value of natural resources and other intangible essentials and account for them literally and figuratively in our economic system, or they will slip away because we undervalue them, allowing them to be spent by the lowest bidder for lack of appropriate financial recognition. In short, we may have to accept that there is a financial price to be assigned to the so-called non-financial goods we love and need most, and that is neither immoral nor shameful to do so. On the contrary, pricing the priceless may be the only practical solution to resolve increasingly unfathomable contradictions. For example, why do our capital markets value companies such as Uber, which offer merely on-demand service we can live without, in the billions of dollars, but our atmosphere, on which all life depends, at zero? Why do we place an unbridled financial premium on ocean view property, but treat the coral reefs that protect the property from catastrophic storms as financially worthless? Why do we value our infinitely scarce fresh water so low that we are free to blast and contaminate it as we force it underground to release natural gas in the hydrofracking process, only to then burn the gas with scandalous energy inefficiency? Only pricing the priceless can redress these destructive patterns by transferring bookable financial value away from what is mostly extractive or exploitive in toward what is vital and irreplaceable. This move redefines the essence of profit and loss and brings to light what truly supports reliable and worthwhile economic investment: natural assets. Now, let's go to page 23, near the bottom of the page, and continuing to page 24 of Pricing the Priceless by Paula Diperna. Over the years, many academic theorists have tried launching efforts at a green CDP, or the Physical Quality of Life Index, PQLI, or the UN's Human Development Index, and numerous others. One of the first of these experiments took place in the tiny mountain kingdom of Bhutan, hemmed in by the Himalayas and a long-standing monarchy. The Gross National Happiness Index, GNHI, introduced in 1972 by the fourth Dragon King, Jigme Singye Wangchuck, when Bhutan was rarely visited by outsiders, aimed to do just what the name suggests, put a numerical weighing on the subjectivity of well-being. The index tried to measure non-traditional parameters that lie outside classical economic metrics, but which people need and feel, examining 9 non-economic domains: living standards, education, health, environment, community vitality, time use, psychological well-being, good governance, and cultural resilience. These received equal weight in the overall calculations, and the people of Bhutan were surveyed on various subcategories, such as literacy and whether they felt a sense of inclusion. All intangibles, environmental diversity, and resilience, which covered wildlife damage, urban issues, and responsibility towards ecological issues, was also one of the subsets in the 9 basic parameters used to evaluate and weigh happiness. Now, let's go to page 26. In other words, by recognizing private and government research and development as investment, the statistics of the economy were catching up with the transformational shifts that were occurring in what and how we value, and where investors wanted to place capital, and how much did the inclusion of research and development add to the economic value of the country. According to the BEA, in a July 2013 recap, $396.7 billion, including $74 billion for capitalization of entertainment, literary and artistic originals, and no small change at that time. By 2015, 80% of U.S. productivity already derived from intangible goods and services. In its annual study of intangible asset market value, Oceantomo, a leading intellectual capital valuation firm, put it this way: the components of the S&P market value data from the start of 2015 reveals the implied intangible asset value of the S&P 500 grew to an average 84% by January 1st, 2015, a growth of 4 percentage points over 10 years. By Oceantomo's next update in 2020, intangibles made up 90% of market value of the S&P 500 and 75% of the S&P 350 in Europe, with growth in major Asian regions. With its next update due in 2025, Oceantomo concluded that, at least for the United States, where 25 years of data existed, the economy is inverting from one where value was measured by touch to one where value is driven by thought. The integration of research and development, intangibles, and the GDP did not foresee an eventual need to also include the intangible values of natural capital and other missing environmental considerations asserted by early environmental economists. such as Daly, Henderson, and others. But the ultimate effect of the inclusion is quite related. If the economy and the GDP could officially start to take account of the intangibles, such as the brain power that goes into a new patent, or artistic creation, or any of the soft stuff that eventually leads to a breakthrough in the so called knowledge economy, then accounting for the intangible benefits of nature that have gradually come to be known as ecosystem services could no longer be called impossible. Now, let's go to page 35, near the middle of the page. A fast forward in the accounting story takes us to the dramatic opposite of the meticulous methods Pacioli lauded. The infamous depression of the 1930s and the crash of global stock markets, also financial inventions due to fraudulent and inflated valuations conveyed in misleading accounts, leaving the global economy resting on quicksand. The tide went out. Economic ruin spread across the world. Jobs and livelihoods evaporated, and underlying capital values whisked into ether. In the United States, to reform the deceptive practices that hollowed out the nation, the U.S. Congress established the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in 1934 to oversee the stock market, along with the Office. Casey Waters Show. Producer, Casey Waters. Graphic editing, Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, CaseyWaters2 at CaseyWaters.com.